Hey everybody, welcome back to the Take a Stand live event. I am interviewing 35 amazing women who all have incredible stories of triumph over trauma. They will have experienced something in their life which has been quite challenging to navigate, and they're going to share a snippet of their story without going into too much detail and to talk about how they came out the other side, in the hope that it inspires you and lets you know that whatever you are going through right now, there will always be light at the end of the tunnel, regardless of how difficult it might feel. Now, I'm streaming in 3 different places, but this is a message to everybody on YouTube. Thank you very much for joining us. Not that other platforms aren't important, but the main focus is on YouTube, my YouTube family. Please do consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already joined. Make sure you click that notification bell, and you also click the button. I've forgotten, actually. There's too many things that I've got to remember to do. I think it's click the like button. And if you have a question for Sharna, please leave it in the box below or reach out. You'll find below the video, you'll be able to access her email address and more information. You can connect with her directly if you would like to have a conversation. Now, these conversations can be quite difficult to heal, especially if you have a similar story. So I just want to say, please, please, please do make sure that you get yourself help and support. You could reach out to Sharna, of course, that's no problem. But if you need more immediate support, make sure that you reach out to people who are close to you, head off to the doctor, or if things are really critical, head off to A&E. There's no shame in doing that. That is a perfectly acceptable thing to do. Okay, so let's get into the most important part, which is Sharna's story of triumph over trauma.
Thank you so much for having me and allowing me to share my story in this space. So essentially, there's kind of 2 parts to my story. My first part of my trauma was, and also where I kind of started to realize that there was something more for me, was my dad passed away when I was 19. So it was obviously a shocking experience. Like, I never thought that that would be part of my life so young. And him being so young, he was only 49 himself. And at that point, I experienced a deep depression, and I tried to live in the past. I tried to live with his memory, which caused me to stay in a depression for probably a solid year afterwards. That was my, I guess, introduction into really profound grief. And in 2017, we experienced a miscarriage, which was the other part of my life where I just felt like my whole entire world had been turned on its head. Everything I knew to be true before then was shattered. And I knew that I had to be able to process my grief, but it was also something I had never experienced before in my entire life. So I'm like, how do I actually navigate this time? What do I do? I felt like I was the only person who had experienced this type of loss because no one spoke about it. I felt so alone. I felt so isolated and so misunderstood. So that part of my life was what really changed the trajectory of me, my life, everything I had chosen to do. Everything looks so different then after that.
Wow. So your dad was really quite young, wasn't he?
He was. He passed away from a heart attack. He had his first open heart surgery when he was 29. So it was obviously something we were aware of, but never anything that we thought we'd ever experience. And even to this day, like he passed away in 2003. To this day, I still grieve. To this day, I can still talk about him like he's here. And but also there are days that I break down. And it's I guess because we thought we would have him forever. We thought we would have him till he was old. And it's really hard to, there are things in my life I'm like, I wonder what it would be like if he was here. And he never got to see my daughter, so it's just it's things. He never got to see me get married, like things that I was like, I wonder what life would be like if he was still here. And but he taught me so much in the short time that he was here, so I don't regret anything in my childhood, anything that I did or we chose to do up until the time that he passed away.
With the loss of your little one, what were some of the experiences? What was the impact of that on your daily life? That's the question.
It made me question absolutely everything. It made me question everything about my life, about what I had chosen to do, about me as a person. I felt like I was broken. So I had a lot of beliefs that I created about myself, that I was incapable of doing things. My body was designed for one thing and it couldn't do that. And I kind of, my husband noticed that it did. I was starting to head back down that into depression, like, because my husband was there when my dad passed away, so he could see me going back down that path again. It honestly has a ripple effect through every aspect of your life, and it's not something that you think. You just like, oh, a lot of people on the outside were like, but you had nothing to show for it. And I was like, but that's, as soon as I had that positive line, there was an instant connection and an instant moment of how my future was going to change. So that was all taken away from me. And, and it has a ripple effect throughout every aspect of your life, and how you function and how you show up in your life.
It's funny. I was just writing down the ripple effect, and as I was writing it down, you were saying it. I was like, "Oh, that's interesting."
Yeah.
The ripple effect, and trauma is quite interesting, because we don't realize that the trauma the individual's experience is then getting passed on to other people. Then it's almost like it ripples out. So I think I was thinking of something this morning in terms of, you could have a police officer that witnesses something that leaves an imprint on them. He then acts it, or she acts it out in whatever it is they're doing. That then leaves an impact on someone else. So it is like that, a cumulative ripple effect of the impact of trauma that I think we often forget about. Yeah. It's more than just one person. A lot of the time, it gets passed on to other people who then act it out in a different way. So it doesn't stop at the individual. It continues like that wave until it's addressed at the source, I guess. Would that be accurate? Or am I just making it up?
No, I can actually picture like how you're saying it, and you start to show up as a different person. You show up as a different person because of what you have been through, and sometimes it isn't necessarily. It could be involuntary, the way that you've reacted to something then, but that then has that effect, and it has a different effect on yourself and the other person, and then and then however that interaction went, if if everyone was reacting, like the whole situation changes, as opposed to if you're able to start healing your trauma, you start to behave differently in those situations, and again the outcome changes. So I think definitely having these traumas and not being able to process them does absolutely have it changes you and how you show up, and it changes how you interact with other people, and then those interactions then change, and it does have this big ripple effect around you. Especially if these other people also don't have, I mean, these other people might have stuff that they're not dealing with, and then that triggers them, and then they change and show up differently. So it has like this domino effect of, like, you know, it knocking on like to different people and different areas in your life.
It's interesting what you just said about processing trauma, and you're absolutely right. It is about processing the experience to be able to recover and heal. And you know, if you don't process it, then you're never given the chance to recover and heal.
Yeah. And I think you know, our body holds on to the trauma. So until we can, and also if we can't address our trauma, it can become a generational thing as well. Like it can physically change the DNA of our body. So being able to process in a safe environment, like what we have experienced, being able to do that with the right people so that your body feels safe. That's the only way that you can start to really process your trauma, your experiences, when your body feels safe. So you have to do this in a safe environment with safe people. But the foundation to us being able to recover and to heal is to fully see our experience, to know, like, to acknowledge what we have been through, and to acknowledge the pain and see it for what it is, and then be able to, that's when we can be able to heal the pieces and start to heal those different things in different ways. And your body is going to reveal your healing process in layers. So your body won't reveal everything all at once, because it will be too overwhelming. So it'll just reveal it to you when it's ready. But I think, you know, being able to recover, the first thing is to be able to see your experience and to be able to start to process it.
It was only in the last 5 years or so when I really, actually it might have been a bit longer than that, when I really started to understand that I could get my head around some stress it is that I was walking into. But then if my body also had a memory of an event, my brain could, I can't think of the word, I could control my brain to get into a situation and push myself through it. But if my body didn't want me to do it, it would take me right out. Panic attacks, anxiety attacks, it wouldn't allow me to put myself in a situation that it thought was going to cause me harm, even though I could get my brain to sort of like push through the resistance. My body was like, nah, you're not doing that. You've got to be joking. Here, have a panic attack. So, and I would be like, and it's taken me a long time to realize that if the body doesn't feel safe, regardless of what you're thinking, it will take you out of a situation. Whether, I mean, for me, it's panic attacks, it's anxiety attacks. For other people, it will be something else. Because I always used to think of trauma as just being emotional, not being anything to do with the body at all. I didn't understand the brain and body connection and how that worked. It's quite eye-opening.
Yeah, it's like literally, and that's where I like, healing can't be just a one and done thing. It can't just be working on your emotional health. It can't just be working on your thoughts. It can't just be, changing your diet. Like, it literally has to be a holistic approach. Like, you have to be able to go, okay, there are so many different elements to your recovery, and, your mind, your body, and your spirit, they're all part of that. So you have to be able to acknowledge and see that for what it is too. And your body is always communicating with you. Like, and you said that it will take you out. I was you could also just really become, like, you could become very sick. Like, you might come down with the flu or a cold or something, but it's your body's way of saying, nope, you're not actually going to do that thing. You're going to stay at home and you're going to relax. So yeah, it's definitely being aware of your emotions, your thoughts, but also that your body is communicating that with you as well on a cellular level. Like, everything is stored in the cells of our body, and it's all energy. So everything's communicating with everything. It's so intricately connected, but it is, like you said, it's eye-opening when you start to really go down into that path.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting that you won't have any, well, I'll talk about my own experience. I can't talk about other people, but I didn't have any at the time. I know now what was going on, but I didn't have any conscious awareness of what was going on. I didn't have a clue. The memory was so deep that I couldn't see it, or I couldn't make the connection, but my body could remember it.
Yeah.
And
It's
a bit like
deep in the subconscious, like, because that is where everything, it remembers every encounter that we've ever had, every trauma that we have ever experienced, everything we've ever smelt and tasted and touched. Like, it remembers everything. And when that's where everything's stored. And like you said, not all the time do you know what's there, and you might not be able to recall that, but it's generating a response. And and then we've got to be able to figure out, okay, how can we start to go that bit deeper and reprogram that subconscious part, and sort of get to the part where that's causing you to act out in a certain way or react, because that's still, it's there, but not all the time are we aware of what's there.
Yeah. Sharna, with the women that you work with, or the families it is that you work with, is there a common theme that you see that is like the top of the list that you always see that is common for the people that you work with?
Yeah, and we've sort of touched on this too. It's like, it's very much that they want to, I think they feel like they have to stay in their pain to remember their baby.
Oh, interesting.
And yeah, I've been there myself, and even with my dad passing away, that's where I was depressed. And essentially depression is living in the past. Like, it's trying to relive everything that's happened. I was trying to do everything that I was doing, prior. I didn't want to move on. I didn't want to acknowledge my life. After he passed away, I didn't want to. And it's the same. Like, I could start to really see that for myself after our miscarriage. But it is like a common theme that I see a lot with women is, they don't want to be able to move on because they feel like if they move on or move forward, they will forget, because they're out of the pain and they will forget their experience.
Well, that's hard.
Yeah.
That's like a double whammy, isn't it? Most people are trying to escape it and move past it, not to stay in it.
Yeah. It's, and when I was when you sent that question, I was like, that's the thing that, in any other trauma, you try to forget, you try to push it aside. But a lot of, which is essentially still that's a common theme as well. They don't want to, address their emotions because the emotions are too uncomfortable. So they do tend to push them aside. But then there's the flip side of that as well, where they do want to stay in that experience. They don't want to drift too far from that experience because they feel like if they do move away from that their pain, being out of their pain will mean that their experience, the memory is gone. Which it makes it really hard because, I've been there and I can totally empathize with them in being there. But it's one of those things that, I feel like they just need to know that it's always going to be a part of their story, that being able to heal and recover doesn't mean that they will ever forget.
I can imagine they need some support and some help to navigate that, and it must become really complicated because I can imagine most of the time you'll be dealing with two people, a couple, not just one individual. So you've got the dynamic of the two people who are living through that experience, which is quite different to what other people experience, because they experience it more as an individual. Not everything, but a lot of things they experience as an individual, not necessarily as a unit, as two people.
Yeah. And that's the hard thing too, to understand that there are two people in that relationship. There's two ways that they're going to grieve, but they can do it together. They can work together in being able to help each other process that.
So what are some of the ways that they can start to process? I'm still in the dynamic of, I'm just thinking about the dynamic of wanting to move past it, but not wanting to move past it, to stay in it, and how hard that must be.
And it is very difficult, and it's not until you kind of want to move past it that you actually can get yourself out of that. And until it's almost like an awakening that you realize, oh my gosh, like I've been in this really dark place for so long. And there could have been so many people that were trying to help them out of there, and they couldn't see it. But I think the first part is to really just acknowledge your experience. Like everything that you have been through is valid. All of the emotions, all of the feelings, all of the thoughts, they're all part of the grieving process. They're all part of, having to try and navigate something that you've never had to navigate before. And you've had to probably make decisions that you would never have been faced with before. And it's just to show yourself some love and compassion in that space, because also a lot of people feel like they have to rush through being there to be back to a normal functioning human. But just allow yourself to be there, and show yourself love and compassion when you're there, when you're hurting and you're in pain, but acknowledge what's going on for you. Like have that awareness, see, if you can acknowledge the emotions, acknowledge the thoughts, but know that everything that you're going through is okay. It's all valid.
It's like being able to, it's so difficult, isn't it, when you're in it, to recognize, to have any knowledge of what is really going on, and the natural steps and the natural processes it is that we all go through when we experience these type of things, even though they're unique to us and our experiences. There are common themes and, different, what I can't remember, is there 7 levels of grief? there's something that's coming into my head about there's a process that people go through, or they can move through it at different points.
Yeah. So there's some stages will say there's 5 and some that there's 7, but essentially it's just to acknowledge where you are, and that one day you might be in one stage, one day you'll be in the next day you'll be back at the first, then at one point you could be on the 5th stage. Like it's not a scale that goes like along and you're going to hit each one and then you're done. It's
if only.
I know. It's a big old mess. And you just literally, when you wake up in the morning, acknowledge how you're feeling on that morning and know if you're sad and if you're angry or you're frustrated or you're numb, that's okay. The next morning you wake up, if you're happy, be happy, be okay with that, because your body wants you to feel whatever it is you're feeling. Your body wants you to process those. Don't dismiss them, don't diminish them. Just be with them, witness them, because your body wants you to.
I can imagine it's really hard for the mother, not just because she's got her own emotional experience of the trauma, but she's also got the chemicals and the whole impact on the body and what it is that she has been through. So those two things combined must be quite a challenge to navigate.
I remember actually experiencing the baby blues after my miscarriage, and I hit rock bottom. It's almost like I didn't want to move. I was just emotional, even though I was a early miscarriage for myself, the hormones are still there. Everything, your body still felt like goes through all of the motions until it realizes that there's nothing there. And for me, that was, having to go through an emergency procedure to finalize the miscarriage. Like, it was a very traumatic experience. I remember handing my therapist a piece of paper, and because in that recovery, in the waiting of me being, my body sort of meant to be doing it on its own, I rang my mum and I said I was going to die, and I legitimately thought that I was going to die. And then they rushed me to hospital. I couldn't stand up, I couldn't walk, I couldn't move. So, and I was in pain and I couldn't take anything for it. And I was, my therapist just read my words on the paper and she was speechless. She just said, I can't believe these thoughts were going through your mind. And, it's huge. Like, you have this huge emotional roller coaster, and grief on its own is a huge emotional roller coaster, let alone having those hormones of pregnancy within you as well.
Yeah, very, very hard. That sounds absolutely terrifying.
It was. That's why I actually legitimately thought I was going to die. Like, I'm like, there's no way that I could survive this. And the information that I was given was nothing compared to what happened. So yeah, it was scary. And but that was, and it's also something that no one speaks about, how the GPs, they tell you it's going to be just like a heavy period, and I'm like, nope.
Sound like it.
No. I was passing out just by standing up. So, it's definitely not something that I expected. And also the recovery after that wasn't, anything that I was prepared for either.
So I know this is work that you're very passionate about now. And before we went live, you were talking about, you have a program it is that you've created, which you're looking to train other people to become practitioners in this space, which is absolutely awesome. Congratulations on doing that. It will be very well received. So looking back to your younger self, what's the one piece of advice it is that you would give yourself, knowing what you know now? If only we knew what we knew now back then.
You know, I went through a lot when I was a child. I was bullied. I believed that I couldn't be myself. I had to be someone else. I was always trying to copy other people because they were popular and I wasn't. But I wasn't born to fit in. I was born with a unique mission that was as unique as what I was, what I am. And you know, if I could give myself that advice now, I would be just embrace yourself, because you are here for something more than copying people and being a people pleaser. Like, you are here for a bigger mission, and it requires me to be myself, my authentic self, and being vulnerable and feeling like a square peg in a round hole. It requires me to be vulnerable, which I thought was my weakness when I was growing up. So, you know, I embrace all of that now, and I would tell myself to embrace that if I was looking back over the years.
Yeah, nice. I like that. It's really in line with the name of the summit, actually, of this event, which is Take a Stand. You know, that's really about, you know, taking a stand for yourself, for the uniqueness of you, for what it is that you believe in. I think it's so easy nowadays just to get swept up in what other people are doing, and it's so easy to go online and feel so inadequate because you see what everybody else is doing, and you're just like, I mean, I've done this. I'm like, why am I mean, I'm just guessing. It's all an illusion. None of it actually makes any sense whatsoever.
Yeah.
But it's just my mind
Yeah.
is telling me that I'm no good, I'm too slow, or I'm not doing things fast enough, or my photograph isn't as good, or it's a battlefield. But I love what you're saying about, you know, taking a stand for yourself, which is
And
fantastic.
I've got to keep reminding myself even now to just to be me. Just be me. No one else can do what I can do.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you very much for sharing your story with us.
That's
I
okay.
really appreciate it. It's been lovely to talk to you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, no, you're very welcome. I'm glad that you could join, because this is such it's a perspective that I don't actually really go into. I don't know anything about it because I've never had children, and I've never been around people who have, not that I'm aware of. Actually, why would I know? I wouldn't know. So I take that one back. So this is an area of expertise that I'm actually not familiar with. So it's been really interesting to learn and understand some of the additional complexity on top of the trauma it is that people experience that I hadn't thought about before, which is it's good, because there is not enough education around these types of subjects.
No.
There's not enough
There's
conversations, there's not enough education, and this is ultimately, these stories are what it is that we need to hear, because they sort of close that gap a little bit. But if you're listening and you need some additional help and support, Sharna's details are below the video, so please do make sure that you connect, reach out. You'll be able to connect with her on her website and find out further information. If you're thinking maybe a practitioner course would be a really great idea, something that you want to look at exploring, you'll find the details on the website as well. So please do make the time. But as I always say, please put yourself first, take a stand, make sure that you get the help and support it is that you need before you start dealing with everything else that is complicated in your life, because ultimately trauma recovery and healing is an inside out job. No one else can do it for you. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.